What's up, family? Welcome back to the channel. We got another video for you today. Dr. Umar Johnson on Brother Kevin Samuels and Black Love. Apparently, there's been some, and I say some, not all, but some black women who have been celebrating the passing of Kevin Samuels. And honestly speaking, I really don't understand that mentality. It's very disrespectful. It's completely unnecessary. But Dr. Umar and Kevin Samuels, they didn't see eye to eye. You know, they didn't get along really. But he still has come to his defense. He's made this video, and I like the video. Just wanted to play it for you. Give me your opinion. Leave a comment, and just leave a comment when it's done. We can have a discussion about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And give me a second. I'll get it started for you.
This week we saw the passing of the prophet Kevin Samuels, who is a polarizing figure, primarily for telling the truth. So why do you think we've seen such polarization over his death, and many black women celebrating as if they had just vanquished Thanos at the end of the Avengers or something? When it comes to the passing of Kevin Samuels?
Here's what I would say. First thing that I think has to be said on this topic of the passing of Mr. Kevin Samuels is none of the black women who chose to go on his platform were forced to do so. He didn't beg any of them. He didn't manipulate any black women into coming on his platform. They all did so consciously of their own free decision. They came willingly. His platform was supported by women, and he has just as many female defenders as he has male defenders. And so therefore, to some degree, although I likewise did not agree with his message or his methods, many sisters who are suggesting that Kevin Samuels created this rift between black men and black women, they're being disingenuous. 75% of the vitriol, the hostility, and the vilification that black women are now showing towards Kevin Samuels would be more rightly placed or directed towards the queendom, the sisterhood, not Kevin Samuels. If anything, he exposed it, he exploited it, and he marketed the pre-existing differences between black men and black women, but he did not birth them. And so I'm disappointed in both the way that black men and black women are reacting to Kevin Samuels' death. On the side of the sisterhood, I'm seeing black women say things like, I'm throwing a party to celebrate his death. I've seen a sister say that. I've seen other women say, yes, we should be praising God for this. We should be honoring the ancestors that he is dead. But did you have the same energy for the police that Trayvon Martin? Did you have the same energy for the police who killed Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland? I mean, what about the enemies of the black community? Did you throw a party when they were convicted or murdered or whatever the case may be? You don't show that type of vitriol to the enemies of black people, but yet you'll show it to Kevin Samuels. And then on the side of the brother's attorney, I take issue with the way in which many of our men are elevating him to the level of a black liberation martyr. Kevin Samuels was not a black activist. He did not have a history of grassroots work. I'm not aware of anything he did to fight against police injustice, mass incarceration, miseducation, gentrification, access to wealth. He was a businessman. He was a very successful businessman who used his platform to market his views on black male-female relationships to a tune of $3+ million. And I have no problem with people celebrating him as a businessman. I have no problem with people applauding the professional manner in which he offered his narrative to black men and black women. Three-piece suit, very calm, very professional. The ambiance of his platform, I had no problem with the way he conducted himself. But the method and the message, I totally disagree with. And I support black men who want to support Kevin Samuels, but it is disingenuous and it is wrong, Dr. King and Medgar Evers and Malcolm X and Fred Hampton and the most honorable Marcus Garvey to.
That is actually that's actually one of the reasons people didn't like him. It was his delivery. They didn't appreciate his delivery. You know, I didn't really have too much of an issue with it. I mean, I didn't 100% agree with his delivery, but I think that was the problem that a lot of black women had. But that's not a reason to hate the man.
Elevate this man's work to the level of martyrhood or saintdom when he has no history of grassroots activism or work. He was a businessman who did a very good job offering his opinions on male-female relationships.
Now, one of the questions I think people have is his death and the story around it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Do you think there's any validity to this question of whether or not he was assassinated? Because he was found with a Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Spanish woman who was a nurse, and it all just seems a little too convenient. Do you think there's any validity to this claim that he may have been assassinated?
I think there is validity. I do not believe that it is potentially a political assassination. He was very successful. He made a lot of money. He had enemies. And so I very much think that it is possible that black women who hated him or black men who were jealous of him could have potentially participated in a conspiracy that brought about his premature demise. I am also not going to rule out the possibility that the non-black woman that he unfortunately spent his last night on earth with may have been a proxy for his assassination. The fact that this footage showing that she and Mr. Samuels had a disagreement on camera. Okay, he was a little perturbed. I saw the video. We could not see her, but it did look like she wanted to walk in front of the frame on his live, and he told her no. He motioned her away from that. It also looked like he was telling her, if you want to leave, go ahead and leave. You know, he seemed like he was dismissive of whatever her issue was. Understandably, if he's about to go live and she knows that, this is not the time to discuss your issue. So perhaps she wanted to sabotage his live to force him to deal with whatever her issue was. And allegedly, he succumbed on the very evening that he had this mild altercation with this woman. So yes, I think it is very possible that that woman, who many allege was a nurse, could have been a proxy in Mr. Samuels'. The fact that the police report mentioned that they were called for an injury. They didn't say a black man was having a heart attack. They were called there for an injury, which to me is suggestive of the possibility that there was some sort of a physical altercation that took place between him and that female. So yes, I do believe it could have been foul play.
We've gotten to a point in our society where it's very difficult to believe literally any narrative coming out of the mainstream media. And when it comes to this narrative about his activities on the last night of his life, very little of it is adding up. And I think that we have to take that in consideration, both in considering his physical, perhaps, assassination, but in the character assassination that we've seen happen thereafter. When you start seeing black women literally throwing parades and celebrating on the grave of Kevin Samuels because he has done the horrible and unforgivable action of telling the truth, it comes down to the white power structure being able to influence what you believe to be black femininity and black feminism, as opposed to what is actually important to supporting the black community?
There were truths in his message, but he chose to offer those truths in one of the most abrasive ways that you possibly could. He did not couch his assessments of black women in a loving or supportive manner. He gave them brutally. But I think that the brutal manner in which he offered his narrative is what gave birth to his rise on the social media platform. Had he not been brutal, he may not have been that successful. See, the contradiction of those who take issue with the disrespectful manner in which Kevin Samuels criticized black women, the hypocrisy lies in the fact that they listen to gangster rap music that disrespected them far more and far worse than Kevin Samuels did, but they're not wishing for the death of any of those artists. You see, they watch reality shows and they follow entertainers who have had some of the most disrespectful things to say about black women, but yet and still none of those entertainers or athletes were criticized or condemned as much as Kevin Samuels. And those people have made more money than Kevin Samuels, and they still happen to be walking on the earth. So we have to call a spade a spade. You know, I think, though, that in my personal opinion, Kevin Samuels' critique of black women and his prioritization of finances and physical attractiveness as being the two most important things in making someone a high value man, a high value woman, a high value mate, I don't agree with that at all. Because black men in this racist American society are often victimized by not being given adequate economic opportunity. So to put so much emphasis on money as being the determinant as to whether you can find you a quality woman, I reject that. And on the flip side, black women who have been so victimized by European standards of beauty forced upon them, I thought that Kevin Samuels' a reinforcement of those European standards of beauty on black women as what they need to measure themselves up against. I thought that was unfair. And to your point, the fact that he was found with a woman, a non-black woman, and because Kevin Samuels was a businessman and not an activist, I don't know if I could consider that an act of hypocrisy, because he played to the message black men wanted to hear, and he played to a market that made him a millionaire, at least in terms of views. So when you mentioned earlier that he was found to be broke after his death, I don't know how that's possible, because his videos were getting hundreds of thousands of views. He had a couple of videos that even had millions of views. So and he was putting out videos constantly. So I am at a loss to understand how a man who clearly was making $1 million out broke. I think that in and of itself is a mystery also.
I don't believe he died broke, though. People saying that, but where did that come from?
And so on that same point, I do have this question of how do we start having conversations in the black community? Because for every detraction you have of Kevin Samuels, you ain't gonna call him a liar. So how do we start having these conversations in a non-toxic, non-defensive manner that can actually be productive towards revitalizing the black family?
I think, and that's a great question, 3 points to that question of how do we begin to have that conversation. Number one, attorney, we cannot have that conversation if the conversation is going to be filled with toxic black people who are operating from their pain and not from a place of love, who are operating from their history and not from a vision of healing for the black community. Too many of the people having these conversations have already made up their mind. They don't believe black love is possible. And so we need to make sure that we know who is going to be participating in these conversations. It's okay to have some toxic black people in these conversations. But as you mentioned earlier, we need to have people in this conversation who have been in marriages for 10, 20, 30 years. We need to have people in this conversation, such as myself, who is a therapist and have been healing black families for years. Number two, attorney, I think there needs to be an intragender community conversation before there can be an intergender community conversation. In other words, black women need to have a conversation about black women. A lot of this negativity being directed towards a deceased and defenseless Kevin Samuels is unacceptable. Black women need to have a conversation with black women. And I think black men need to have a conversation with black men. There's too many brothers who think it's okay to publicly condemn and criticize black women. I support the manosphere, but I'm not going to support the manosphere if it's only going to be used as an engine to destroy and discredit the public image of black women.
And I think that's a very important point. What I've heard from many black men is that it is now difficult, if not impossible, to articulate your concerns, your issues as a black man without being labeled as misogynistic or misogynoir or any of these other new terms. And because of that, you have black men withdrawing from relationships, withdrawing from marriage, because the work that it takes to make a relationship work is now unfruitful. So now it's just easier to just work, pay bills, deal these hoes, and not have to worry about the idiosyncrasies of a relationship. But that's unfruitful for the black community. What would you say to black men that are far more interested in just having a rotating crew of hoes instead of actually building a family with a black woman?
He is going to have to take his time, be patient, and study as many prospective mates as he possibly can to make sure he makes the right decision. Because the truth of the matter is, if you are successful as a single black man or a single black woman, and if that success exceeds the success of your potential mate, it is a very true fact that you risk losing much of what you built prior to marriage if you get involved with the wrong person. That is even beyond the trauma and the pain of past disappointments. There's books out here now, some of the most popular books being written by black and white psychologists, is talking about how marriage, the rates of marriage are going down in this country and even in Europe, because successful individuals are making the decision that the gains of marriage do not equal or outweigh the risks of marriage if it doesn't work. And so that's why this conversation, this narrative, this toxic discourse between the manosphere and the black feminists is so destructive to the future of the black family. We already see a situation where nearly 90% of all the commercials we find are black men with white women or black women with white men. 90% of all the sitcoms and television shows are black men with white women or black women with white men. So we see that America has a very real agenda of destroying the organic black family. And so we cannot afford to allow hurt people in the black community to brainwash and convince non-hurt people in the black community who still believe in black love to give up on that. And that's one of the reasons going forward, attorney, I plan on having a conscious singles conventions, which is something I've been working on for the past year. And as soon as FDMG is ready, we want to host our first one. We want to bring black men and women together who still believe in heterosexual black love and give them an opportunity to meet other people in a heterosexual context who also believe in black love, so they can meet them in an open venue, an open vehicle, explore their personality in a non-threatening, safe environment towards possibly taking the next step to making that dating situation something that they might want to make permanent. We have to do that. Those of us who still believe in black love are not being vocal enough. We're not being active enough. We're not promoting it enough. I say it all the time. Black men who believe in black love need to make it known. Black women who still believe in heterosexual black love need to make it known.
It seems that very much a market economy away from happiness. Like, when's the last time you heard an R&B album with a black woman talking about, I got a good husband at home, he treats me right, everything is great? That song doesn't exist. When's the last time you heard a rap song where they said, found a good woman, she treats me right, she raises the kids, the family is wonderful, and therefore we don't have any complaints? What will it take in order for us to actually be able to have a conversation, not out of pain, but out of growth as a black community?
I think we have to find the people who are healthy enough to have those conversations. One of the biggest problems we have in our community, attorney, is we have emotionally damaged people who are not interested in seeking help. They're not interested in seeking help. And they think the best way to heal from their past relationship traumas and from their deficient childhood issues is by engaging in another relationship with another black person. And this is the way that this toxic mindset grows. It's like a cancer, because let's say I'm emotionally damaged from my previous relationships. Instead of seeking help, which is going to force me to look at how I contributed to that trauma, I'm going to ignore that. And I'm just going to get right back out here, find a decent, healthy, psychologically balanced black woman, and I'm going to infect her life with all of my baggage, because that's the definition of an emotional vampire. An emotional vampire is somebody who doesn't want to face their own pain. Instead, they want to find a healthy person and make that healthy person responsible for doing something they can't, and that is healing somebody who is not interested in healing themselves.